Today we sit down with Dawn Carter, Enterprise Data Architect at BAE Systems. She is an absolute force of nature. She's got to where she is today through sheer determination, belief, bravery, not being afraid to ask difficult questions and putting herself out there.
Redefining your limits, the power of how hard can it be? So I ask myself that question daily, several times a day of, how hard could that be?
I admire Dawn's leadership, her ability to be vulnerable, and her ability to turn adversity into her superpower. Dawn refers to her experience as a school of life, with no degree and an unconventional route into data.
Like, you want to learn how to ride a unicycle? How hard could it be, really?
Yeah.
You want to learn how to juggle? Well, how hard could that be? You want to implement a master data management solution across 40 different countries? Oh, that sounds like it's going to be pretty hard. But how hard could it actually be?
Dawn is the epitome of putting your mind to something and achieving it. I cannot wait for you to hear her story, and there's so much more to come. Enjoy! So Dawn, let's talk data. So the team are so excited that you're here today. They've got a million questions for you that they've given me. And I thought, where would we start? Because you've got an amazing career and you're doing events and travelling the world at the moment. But when we last spoke, you spoke to me about the school of life rather than formal education at a higher level. So could you start with that, please?
Yeah, of course I can. So I always say that I came from a really weird and peculiar background into the job that I've got now, because most people, I think, when they go into data or they end up in data, it's because they've done an accountancy degree or economics, or they went to uni and they just found their way into doing something kind of related to data. But I actually didn't start from any of that. I worked in a call centre.
Yeah.
I was answering phones, selling business insurance. You know, hi, how can I help you? Do you want some public liability? That was literally my job. And so coming from where I started, really, as my first proper adult job in an insurance company, to where I am now is so very different. And actually, that's probably a really good thing, because I bring a different perspective to a problem. I don't come from a, here's how to write a dissertation. I come from a, here's how it's going to be simple for people to understand, which actually is the difficult part when you're trying to tell the story about data, is making it easy for non-data people to understand it. And so I just put myself back in the shoes of, how did I understand it in the first place, and what did good look like for me? So it's been interesting, but I guess I could take you on a bit of that journey on how I got to where I am now.
Yes, please.
So I started in insurance, as I said, selling business insurance, and I quickly moved up to become an underwriter, so looking at larger, complex commercial risks for businesses. And at the time, we were looking at, how do we automate some of this process? So rather than writing it down on a piece of paper and working out your sums on how much you were going to charge someone, how do we do that more efficiently? And I was asked to go and look at a system in one of the offices to say, could we adapt that for the things that we would need to use it for? And I came back with 6 pages of notes about things that we could do differently and different things that would have to be changed for it in order for it to work. And I got put on a bit of a secondment to test the system when they brought it in. And that was supposed to be 4 weeks to test the system. That lasted 6 months, that project,
Right.
because actually we found out that the documentation wasn't printing correctly, and I started to get really interested in, if I put this in this field and it prints like that on the document, that's magic, how did that happen? And if I key something in here, then this makes this online system work. That's magic, how did that happen? And I just got really curious into how data moved throughout different systems in order to do something else. And so it really piqued my curiosity. And I said, I quite fancy being a business analyst. That looks like quite a cool job. Let me try that. So I had a number of secondments in that organisation, just plugging away, learning different things, asking 1,000,001 questions. And I was doing some sort of self-reflection, self-development of, what do I actually want to do? What do I want to be? What is good looking like for me? And at the time I had a really good mentor, and he said to me, if the job that you want doesn't exist where it is right now, look further afield. Like, what's actually keeping you in Glasgow? And I thought, you're right. What is keeping me in Glasgow? And I'd been doing a lot of work with our change department at my previous company, and a job got advertised just after the Christmas time, and I thought, I'm just going to apply for it. I know it's nowhere near where I live, but I'm going to apply for it anyway. And so I applied, and the hiring manager phoned me to say, did you know it was me that was recruiting for that job? I'm so excited you've applied for it. So 2 months later, I packed up all my stuff, moved further south, so across the border and into England, not the real south, so I'm still in the northwest, moved to Bolton and started working as a business analyst. And from there, I got really interested in data. So how do we make systems work? How do we get information from one system to the other? What does it all mean? What's the magic, the smoke and mirrors that makes it all happen? And I got put on a project looking at automating fraudulent claims.
Right.
So how do you automatically detect that claim is fraudulent? How do you do that with the data? Well, that was really interesting. And I was talking to the data architect on that programme. I said, that job that you do, I quite like that. Tell me more about this job, please. And so he sat me down and he told me about what the job is. I went, yeah, that's my next career move. I'm going to be a data architect. And I said this to the CIO at the time. I want to be a data architect. That's my next career move. And he said to me, don't do it to yourself. You've got far too much personality to be a data architect. And I thought, right then, watch me. And so a job got advertised for a data architect, and I looked at the job description. And I think, like most women, we go, I can't do a lot of the stuff on this. But instead of having that moment of, I can't do the stuff on this and I'm not going to apply, I thought, I'm just going to phone the hiring manager anyway. Let's see what he says. Because the worst case scenario, he'll give me some good direction of things that I could work on, places that I could go, training that I could do, people that I could shadow to learn how to do that job in the future. And so I phoned him and said, look, so I can't do any of this stuff that you're actually looking for technically, but what I do have is 10 years experience in the company, so I know all of the systems inside out, upside down and back to front. Can you help me? And he came back, and obviously I went to interview and what have you, and he came back and said, yeah, come on then, I'll train you how to be a data architect. And he was honestly one of the best managers that I've ever had in my life, because what he used to do is explain to me in real practical terms what the thing was that we just spoke about, because I didn't have a clue what they were talking about on team meetings and cloud this and partition that. What? I don't know what any of these words actually mean. And he would sit down and explain it to me and get me to try things of, let me test your learning, see the bits that you've figured out for yourself and the bits that you need someone to teach you. And it was really productive because I had that safe environment to not know all of the answers and to get stuff a bit wrong. And he was just amazing. And unfortunately we had a massive restructure in the organisation and he got made redundant. I didn't quite have the same experience with follow-on managers from there, and I ultimately left the company in the end. But when I moved to my current organisation, again, I was in a great environment. I was surrounded by really great people that I could ask a lot of questions and how does this work and what does that mean? And that sounds crazy. What do you mean by that? Oh, I don't know any of these things that you're talking about. And I had a real brain-scratching moment of, I don't know if I'm good enough for this. Right. I don't know if I knew what I was doing because I'd worked at the company so long, but do I have actual confidence in my architecture skills? Oh, I don't know. And I was really having a bit of a crisis of confidence of, am I good enough? Do I even know what I'm doing? Have I made the biggest mistake of my life by changing company and leaving my comfortable job where I knew everybody and everything to knowing nobody and thinking I know nothing? And so I started there in January 2022. In March of 2022, I was tapped on the shoulder by 5 different people saying, there's a job going in head office and we'd like you to go for that promotion because we think you'd be really good at it. And so I had a conversation with my then line manager to say, right, I know it's been really 5 minutes since I've started here and I know it's really cheeky, but people have come to me and said that they think I'd be really good at this thing. What's your thoughts? And he said, I'm never going to hold you back from something. Go for it. What's the worst that can happen? Worst case scenario, you don't get the job. You stay where you are. That's not a bad place to be. Best case scenario, you get the job and you progress. And so I applied and I interviewed. And I thought, I've stuffed up this interview. And I got it. And so for the last almost 2 years now, I've been heading up the data architecture teams within my organisation, setting what the data strategy is for architecture, the vision, what is best practice, how do we do data architecture at our organisation. So from having never been to university, having grown up in a council estate, never thinking that these things would be the life that I lead, to now managing lots of people, coming on podcasts, standing up at conference events, talking about data and analytics in my career. It's just so different to the world that I imagined growing up. So, like you say, School of Life graduate.
Yeah, and an amazing story. And I appreciate you had a crisis of confidence at some point. But really, to do what you've done takes an incredible level of braveness. Where do you think that braveness came from?
So I'm not sure if it's brave or crazy, or maybe both, actually. My honest answer to that, when people ask me about how am I so brave, why do I just go there and do it, the honest answer is it's the last conversation I had with my mum before she died.
Oh, yeah.
So my mum passed away, and she had terminal cancer, my mum, and I looked after my mum when she was poorly. And the weekend before my mum finally took her last breath, she said to me, "Do you know, if I could live my life again, I would have went out there, I'd have seen the world, I've done all the things that I wanted to do before I was too old, before I had children, before I settled down." And I think at that point I just thought, what am I doing with my life?
Yeah.
And I think that really gives me the ambition to say, keep going. It's not just for me, it's for the memory of my mum, the memory of my dad now, and I know that comes from a really personal place, but it keeps me going. And every time something happens, or I buy a new car, or I get a new handbag, and things are exciting in my life. I've just come back from Florida, talking at an international conference. Whenever something exciting happens in my life, I just think, God, I really wish my parents would be proud of me. Of
course, yeah, and I'm sure they will be, of course. And they gave you strength ultimately, and you carry that with you. And
absolutely. My mum was the most formidable woman that you would ever meet. No one would dare cross my mum, I can tell you that, for free.
Well, 5 children.
Yeah, 5 children, exactly.
And how did she, and were you in the middle or oldest?
Baby.
Were you?
Yeah,
right.
I like to say when she stopped when she found perfection. I'm not sure she would have agreed with that.
And in terms of your childhood then, was she fairly strict?
Yeah. Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And all my friends would be going out to parties and living life and going to the unders, if you remember unders.
Yes, I do.
Because I never had that luxury because my mum was so strict with me. But I guess some of that strictness came from, we spoke about this before, about when I was diagnosed with having epilepsy and the fear around me having a seizure when I wasn't with her. And I think a lot of that strictness from my mum came from the fear of what would happen to me if I was alone. And I get it now, looking back on it, I get it. But at the time I was like, oh, it's so unfair.
Yeah, you don't understand when you're young. But of course, that's another thing you've overcome, because when we've spoken about your epilepsy before, you were told you'd never be able to drive.
Exactly, yeah. I had a really bad experience when I was diagnosed with epilepsy. So I had a bit of a twitching in my arm, and I didn't really know what it was. And I'd been to the doctor several times, and they said, it's a trapped nerve, get on with your life, really dismissive. And I kept saying to my mum, something funny's happening to me at night. I don't know what it is. I don't know what's happening. I've got pins and needles in my head. I just don't feel right. And this one morning, I remember saying to my mum, I really don't feel well. And I was 14 at the time, and she thought I was just trying to bunk off school. I'm like, I really don't feel well. Please don't send me to school today. And she says, right, well, your sister's moving house, so you're going to have to come with me whilst I help her move house. And so I remember sitting in my sister's rocking chair in our living room of our new house as she's trying to move all of the furniture in. And I just got the word Mum out my mouth. And then I remember coming round in an ambulance.
Oh, wow.
I'd had 4 seizures in one day. I had bitten through my tongue. I had bled onto my pillowcase in the bedroom. And my tongue was really swollen. I was in hospital for weeks as they tried to sort out my seizures. And it was just a really scary time. At 14, this is all happening to you. And it was really, really scary. And I met with a neurologist, post a number of tests, and he said, well, you can't drive, you can't go to parties, don't think about going to a nightclub because of strobe lights. Just come back to me when you want to have a child.
Stop.
And I was like, okay, so basically my life is over. Like,
Yeah.
I can't do anything that my friends are doing. What am I going to do? And my mum, bless her, she contacted a local charity called Epilepsy Scotland.
Mm-hmm.
And one of the epilepsy specialist nurse came to speak to me about, you know, what it actually means to live with epilepsy, and it's not a death sentence.
Yeah.
It can be, and we have to talk about the seriousness of epilepsy. So that is a possibility, and I think that's why my mum was so scared, is because she'd heard about the death sentence, you know, sudden unforeseen death syndrome. So she was really nervous and really worried for me and what was my life going to be like, and all this kind of stuff. And the epilepsy specialist nurse from that charity was just amazing. She came and she was like, look, there's loads of stuff that you can do. You know, here's some handy hints and tips for you. And the best thing to do is trying to figure out if there's a trigger for you. So what is the thing that triggers you to have seizures? Lo and behold, the thing that triggers me can be tiredness, stress, hunger. So I always have a snack with me.
Yeah.
I always have a nap.
Yeah.
And I try to stay really stress-free as much as possible. But that charity did some really great work with me when I was in my teen years, and trying to come to terms with the fact that I had epilepsy and what did that mean for me. So when I got a little bit older, I started giving back to them. So volunteering, zip sliding across the Clyde, helping them to organise black tie events, you know, whatever I could do to help raise money for the charity that helped me. So when I moved to England and I couldn't just nip into their office to help, you know, fundraise or collect some money for them, I thought, what can I do? What can I do to help give back to that organisation? And again, they were advertising for a trustee vacancy. And I thought, well, I've never been a trustee before.
What does that involve?
What's that about? How hard could it be, right? So I messaged the CEO of the company to say, hey, look, I'm quite interested in this vacancy that you've got. Like, do you think you might consider me? Or like, is it like a no because I don't have any experience? And she was like, absolutely, send me your CV. Let's put you through the process. So I sent my CV. I had a panel interview with 5 different people. 2 of them are neurologists, and they were asking me all of the questions. And I thought, oh God, I've really stuffed this one up as well. But actually they came back and said, no, we'd love to have you come and be on our board. So now I'm on the board of trustees for the Epilepsy Scotland charity based in Glasgow as well. So it's really nice to be able to help give back to a charity that helped me when I was first diagnosed, and they celebrate their 70th anniversary this year. So if anyone wants to go help support a good charity, I recommend that you support some of the work that they do.
Oh, amazing. And do you know what? There is a braveness, because just putting yourself out there, and it's really key advice I give to people, because sending your CV isn't enough, but you're following up with phone calls, conversations, and that in itself shows a proactive nature that people want, you know, as part of their board or as part of their team. But a lot of people are scared even to pick up the phone at the moment, aren't they?
Exactly. And I think sometimes reading a CV, and as a hiring manager, I'll get CVs from people, and it's really difficult to tell what that person's actually like. And at the end of the day, people buy people, right? And so if you can get on with a lot of people, if people have willingness to learn, they can be adaptable, they're courageous, they can articulate themselves well, everything else can be taught to you. Do you know, there's nothing really else holding you back other than the fear of putting yourself out there. And what's the worst that's going to happen? And I always look at things and say, if nobody died, nobody went to jail, it's not that bad.
Yes. Yeah, it's so true. And your story is so inspirational as well, because a lot of people have imposter syndrome in data because they haven't come from a technical background. And architecture, really, that is a traditional pathway to have been a developer, engineer. So what would you say to people who are battling with that and they're having a crisis of confidence, like you mentioned before? What advice would you give them?
So I was having this conversation actually a couple of weeks ago with a group of women who were all talking about how they all feel like imposters, and whether you're the CEO of a company or whether you're the head of department, everyone feels like an imposter. And actually it dawned on me at that moment that maybe the real imposters are the people who don't feel like that. Yeah. Because are they really pushing themselves out their comfort zone? And that's really where growth happens, is at the edge of that comfort where you don't really know what you're doing, you're not really sure, but you ask questions to find out. And so I think from an architecture perspective, not coming from a technical background, I think is advantageous for me, because what that allows me to do is ask questions. So I don't ever assume the answer, because I probably don't know the answer. So asking a lot of questions. What did you mean when you said this? And how will that work for this scenario? And what about this requirement? And have you thought about this thing? How might this work? And I'm sure people get really annoyed with me when I ask 101 questions, but they're coming from a place of, let's create the best solution and the best outcome. And actually a lot of those skills that I learned as a business analyst of being able to translate business speak into technical speak is really helpful as an architect, because a lot of what I do is balancing between the business architecture and the problems that the business have and the things that they're trying to solve, and I just wish I could do this better. And combining that with a technical team of, and here's how now you can develop a solution to this. I actually think business analysts make great data architects, if I'm honest, because that translation skill is really lost on a lot of people. And I think sometimes when you are really technical, you can't see how that solves the business problem, because you're too focused on the technical solution and all of the jargon and the words that we like to use. And who actually cares about that? No one. No one in the business will actually care what a data mart actually is, what a data vault actually is, what a cube is. No one will care. They just want to know that their solution works.
Well, they switch off as well. Yeah, they get disengaged if people are too technical.
Exactly. And so we need to really think about, how do we sell it back to the business? Because no one's going to come to us and say, I want a great data architecture. That's not the question they ask. The question they ask is, I want to get insights from my data. I want to do something shiny, new and exciting. How do we make that happen? And the answer is good solid foundations with a well-designed and built solution. And how do you do that? You design it first. You know, you wouldn't build a house without drawing out a plan of where your kitchen was going to go, or where your living room was going to be, and where the doors would be. You just wouldn't think about that.
No.
So why do we think about our IT systems any differently? We shouldn't. You have to have a plan for what you're going to build. Then you have to have someone check that you've built it correctly. Well, that's all really that we're talking about from an architecture and a governance perspective. And then you can make use of it. So you can sit down in your fancy couch and make a cup of tea in your swanky kitchen, because actually you're getting the benefit from having a good design. And I don't think people think about that when they go with, I've got a problem. And that's okay that they don't think about it, because that's what I get paid for.
Yeah, so true. And how have you found being a female in the space? Because you're a minority in data, in technology and defence.
Yep.
So a triple whammy there.
I know, right?
So how have you found navigating that?
I have mixed reviews of it, actually. So I think if you take women in general, we are not a minority gender. And I am going to talk about gender in the binary sense. Women in this country are not a minority. We make up 51% of the population. But we are still thought of in the workplace as being a minority. And that's because people don't really tell women that data is a good place to work. And I had a really interesting conversation, and I'll leave people's names out to protect their anonymity. But it's a really interesting conversation with a few people explaining data and analytics. And it went something like this. So I asked this person if they had a partner, and their partner was a woman, and did they have any children? And they said yes. Okay, so does your partner know how to make food with all of the food that's in the house, or which shop they might want to go to get some extra ingredients? Of course they do. Okay, does your partner also know that it's your sister's birthday in 3 weeks and you have to be at a certain venue by that time, and in order to get there at that time you're going to have to leave the house at this time, which means you have to get ready at this time, which means you have to finish wrapping the presents by this time? Of course she does. And do they know that it's your child's World Book Day and it's the birthday party of such and such a child, and don't buy from that shop, buy from that one because it's cheaper? Of course they do. All of that stuff that I've just explained is using information to make informed decision, which is all data and analytics actually is. We don't tell women that they're really bloody good at analytics. Who'd you go to in a crisis? You You go to a woman. Who do you go to solve a problem? You go to a woman. They're actually really good at this, but we just don't tell them that.
Such a good example.
And there's really good people out there doing some really good stuff, flying the flag for women in data in particular. I'm a massive fan of women in data. I know you are as well, Emma.
Yeah.
They're doing some really great stuff to bring women together to say, there are other people that look like you doing this cool stuff.
Mm-hmm.
You can do it. Whether you're in data already or you're thinking about moving into data, there's a world of possibilities out there about what you can actually go and achieve in the data space. So I get really excited talking about data, and in particular to women, because they just don't realise their own potential, and it's naturally within them, I think.
I think so, and I agree, and it is very organic, and it's just a place we live in without thinking about it. So that example you just gave, do you remember when you thought about that example, or was it someone that told you that example? Like, was there a pivotal moment you were like, wait a minute, of course we're amazing at data?
Well, I just think women are amazing in general. I am biased because I am one. But I remember, actually, it's really funny, I remember watching a speech that Reese Witherspoon had given, and she was getting nominated, or she'd won an award for something, and she was talking about her filmmaking career, and you know, people saying in films, always the woman says, what are we going to do now? And she says, what woman do you know at the point of a crisis has ever turned to someone and said, what will we do now? A woman will always have an answer about what's coming next. And she just thought at that point that there's got to be a better way for the film industry to showcase women. And I thought, hey, we're probably on the right track with this, because there's got to be a way for the data space to showcase women as well. And so all of the stuff that's happening around women in data and data and analytics, women's networks, I may have called one after myself in my organisation. So that started as a little bit of a joke. So I was forming the partnership with Women in Data for us as an organisation. And I thought, we need to have a space internally that women in our data community can come together internally. And so I thought, I'll call it a Data and Analytics Women's Network. And as an acronym, that'll be known as the DAWN.
Yes.
And that's hilarious. So I thought it was being really funny. And I sent it to my boss, and he was like, yep, good presentation, love it. Let's present it to the CDO. So I presented it to the CDO, and she said, yep, good presentation, love it, let's do it. And I was like, none of them have spotted this actual joke that I put in here, which was a Data and Analytics Women's Network. And now the motion has carried. So now it's called the Data and Analytics Women's Network.
Though. You're going to remember it. What else could you call it?
It's so funny, honestly. But when I was talking about it to some of our colleagues, it literally came from there is a space, and I will go and stand in it, and now my name is literally in that space. So I guess that's my advice really to a lot of people, is if you can see something that you think there's a bit of a gap in the market there, just go and stand in it. Go and do the thing.
Yeah, 100%. And you're a real champion of mental health as well, aren't you? And an advocate of that. So could you just talk to us about some of the work you're doing in that space? Yeah,
of course I can. So I am a big believer in lots of people talking about how they feel, and I know that's not for everyone, right? And some people get really uncomfortable with that. As a line manager of people who work remotely, so I don't see them on a day-to-day or even a weekly, monthly basis sometimes, it's really difficult for me to know if they are coping with the workload that they've got, if they need to be challenged more, if they need help or support. What do people around me actually need? And so I implement with my team a check-in every week that isn't a come talk to me about your work check-in, it's a come talk to me about how you are.
Yeah.
It's so dedicated important time that they have in my very hectic diary that they can come and talk to me about anything. And that could be anything from problems that they have at home, if they're not feeling well, if they've got struggles in their own life. It could be problems that they've got at work. Who do I speak to about this thing? Whatever the case might be, that's their dedicated time to come and talk to me. And I think as people managers, one of the biggest privileges that we have as people managers is the development of our people. And if they feel like they can trust me, if they feel like they could come to me with a problem, whether that's work related or something that could impact their work and their personal life, that's a great place for me to be as a line manager, because they will feel more valued, and I will definitely appreciate the hard work that they give for all of the stuff that I asked them to do, and there will be loads of stuff that I throw at my guys, so sorry to everyone in my team for throwing everything at you. But sometimes you have to push people out their comfort zones as well, and the only way that people feel comfortable trying new things is if you give them that psychologically safe environment to really be themselves in and to make mistakes, and that's okay. I'll support you and I'll have everyone's back. So the people in my team know that when it gets too tough, they're not sure what to do, they're not confident on a presentation, just rope me in. Hey Don, what do you think about this? And I'll be there in an instant to pick up for them, because that's what a good line manager should do.
Yeah, that's amazing.
And I think more broadly as a team, I have the best team of people that surrounds me. I'm so fortunate to work with some really amazing, really clever people who help each other be better, because we challenge each other, and the only reason that we can challenge each other in such a positive way is because it's okay to be wrong, it's okay to have a different opinion. Let's talk about things. I know that I could pick up the phone to any of my colleagues and say, having a really tough day today, this is what's going on in this project, I just don't know where to start. And they'd be like, right, what help do you need? And I can do that with a number of people, and likewise they can do it to me. What that creates is the environment that people feel like they can be themselves, that they are included in the conversation, that they can develop, that actually it's okay to not have all of the answers, because hey, guess what? No one's got all of the answers, and that's all right. And I think from a mental health perspective, given the work that I've done previously is, you know, looking at gender equity, from a mental health perspective, we could absolutely do more to get men talking about their mental health. And in actual fact, I'm hosting a webinar in a couple of weeks' time talking about that very thing. So we are hosting an internal webinar. So sorry for everyone who might want to come and join it.
I know, I want to sign up.
But we're hosting an internal webinar talking to the world's strongest brothers. So Tom Stoltman and Luke Stoltman are coming to talk about their struggles with mental health. Because if the world's strongest of strong men can talk about their mental health, so could everybody else. And as part of Autism Awareness Month as well, we'll be talking about Tom's diagnosis of having autism, the support that his brother Luke gives to him as well. It's just an incredible story. But again, that came out of just a moment of madness or braveness, whatever you want to call it. I'd been connected with Tom on LinkedIn for a little while, and I'm going to go see Giants Live, and I just messaged him to say, hey, by the way, I'm coming to see Giants Live. Any chance you want to come and do a talk at my work? And he was like, sure, contact this person and we'll set something up. And so from that, it just spiraled into now they're coming to do a talk on a webinar for us. So I'm super excited about it.
Yeah, if you don't ask, you don't get. It's so
Absolutely.
key. So are they quite big in that space? Are they quite vocal with their struggles and, of course, comfortable to talk about them?
Absolutely, yeah. And they're doing some really great stuff talking about mental resilience, and because I think a lot of time men in particular don't talk about mental health because they see it as a real weakness.
It's a huge stigma, yeah.
And the conversations that I have with a lot of my male friends are around, are you okay? No, but are you really okay? And I always say that I would much rather listen to someone for hours on end talk about their troubles that they're going through, things that are difficult in their life, than have to listen to someone reading about their life at a eulogy.
Yeah.
I would much rather be on the phone till 2 a.m. to know that someone's okay.
Yeah.
Than have to sit at their funeral.
Yeah, it's so true and so good that you're doing this work. And I take it your company are very open to it as well with your ideas that you bring into the table.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes they have to rein me back in because, as you can imagine, I have about 1 million ideas at any given time. I mean, you know this, right, from when we spoke at your podcast launch. All of the ideas, all of the time, it just never stops. So sometimes I get reined back in because I actually have a job that they pay me to do. Mm-hmm. Fine. Whatever.
Part-time. But I'm really interested in the one-to-ones you do when you ask the key question, how are you? How was implementing that? Because of the way you lead, were your team naturally open, or did it take time for them to get used to a situation? Because it probably felt a bit alien to them if they haven't come from that environment previously. Like, I even ask myself the question sometimes, like, how am I? I don't actually know, because we internalise so much. Yeah. So has that been a process to try and get people to open up?
Yeah, and there's different levels of comfort in that as well. Yeah. So some people are very much, I'm fine, let's just get on with our day. Okay.
Yeah.
You know, that's absolutely fine. Or they might be like, I don't really want to talk about it. I'm not in the place to talk about it yet. That's also fine.
Mm-hmm.
Or there might be people that say, actually, I'm having a really tough time. This is what's going on in my life. Well, that's really good in a way that they feel comfortable that they can come and talk to me about those things.
Yeah.
And actually what that creates for me is the ability to say, well, I can't give you too much work at the moment because I don't want to put extra pressure on you, but come back to me and let me know when I can put more pressure on, when you are feeling in a better place, because then as a manager I can support you in that. I can take the pressure off you, but I can also give you some more stuff to stretch you and help you to grow. And so it's really, I think, really good for that development perspective is to say, actually, I need a little bit of me time. I can't work at a full 100% today. I need time to digest what's happening in my life. And I think some of what COVID has taught us through the pandemic is that line between being at home and being at work is really blurred sometimes. And it's really difficult to get away from the things that are happening in your house. And as a lot of us in the IT space work remotely and work from home, it's really difficult to shut the door on something when it's happening literally the other side of your door. So how do we, as managers, as leaders in organisations, create those environments that people feel safe to say, I need a bit of help and support, whether that's with their work or whether that's a bit of leniency because of stuff that's going on outside of work, I think is really important from a people manager perspective. And I have that same sort of relationship with my line manager. I could go to him and say, today is not the day to get any work out of me. I'm not having a good day. But equally, I'll have days when I say, right, I'm on it today. Who do you want to point me at?
What have you got for me?
And it's just about having that two-way communication of when to push someone and when to hold back. And that's really difficult from a remote perspective unless you're talking to your people and you feel like they can trust you and you can trust them.
Yeah, because I was going to say, I mean, you can't do this remotely, but maybe you can in a way, because we do walk-in talks at Mirai. And I think because then you haven't got the pressure of sitting opposite someone or going for a coffee and looking at someone in the eyes, you know, and the team will go, can we go for a walk and talk? So I know they want to talk about something, whatever that is, personal to them. And sometimes we go around the block once and sometimes there's a few more. But I think, you know, because there's other distractions, people can open up more rather than in a quiet office space or across from teams as well. So there's different ways to be creative with it as well, aren't there?
Absolutely. And I think sometimes it's just opening up about your own experience as well. So I'm really open with my team.
Yeah.
When I'm having a rubbish day, I will be really open and say, look guys, I've got something going on in my life. Today is not the day.
Yeah.
And that's all right. You know, they equally flip it back on me, the people in my team, of when I'm not feeling so great. And they'll say exactly what I say to them is, should you be at work today? Should you be logged in? Do you not want to go and have a lie down? So they flip it back on me quite often, which is really annoying of them, using my own words against me.
I love that though. It's being vulnerable, and it's something that I've struggled with because, you know, you feel as a leader, you should always be put on your brave face and everything's great. And sometimes it can help you. You know, if you're having a bad day, you can almost like pretend, and then suddenly you do feel a bit better. But like you said, there's others you're like, no, I'm not kidding anyone today. And it is being vulnerable, because it's something that I don't know if I'd be completely comfortable with telling the guys, and it's something that I want to learn to do as well, because like you said, if you do it, they're more likely to open up to you as well.
And what do you think puts you in that state of, oh, I don't know if I want to share that with the guys? Is it the fear of the vulnerability?
Yeah, I think so. Yeah, and I've been told to watch, you know, BAE Brown. She's got an amazing TED Talk on vulnerability. And I did watch it and I was like, that's incredible. But I don't know, it's just because I'm not used to it. And I think maybe the way I've been brought up as well, you kind of just deal with it at surface level in terms of how we communicate.
Yeah.
But really, like, you know, it's questioning, like, how am I? Sometimes I don't even know myself. So it's being in tune with your feelings and then being brave enough to open up.
Yeah. And do you think that you've got someone that you could go to? So as you lead other teams of people, where's your support for when you're having a bad day?
My sister.
Oh, I
She's
love your
my
sister.
therapist. Yes, she's amazing. I'm like, Charlotte. I'm like, firstly, are you okay? Before I just like launch in. Because very occasionally I'm hers, but more, yeah, she's amazing. And I do need that. And my mum and my parents as well. So I do have people for different kind of problems. But, you know, I think there is an element for me to grow as a leader to share more, essentially.
Yeah.
You know, if you want others to share with you as well. It's work in progress.
That's fine. I'll ask you again in a couple of months how you're getting on.
And I wanted to ask you, because you've been to Orlando recently.
Yes.
So glamorous. I love this. To give a talk. So what was that talk on?
So this is another really funny story. So I say funny. It's funny to me, but maybe not to everybody else. So I had seen this conference called Enterprise Data World, and I thought that looks so interesting. A lot of the topics that they spoke about were around data architecture, data modelling. I was like, ooh, this is good stuff. I quite want to go to that. And it was being held in California last year in Anaheim. And I asked, you know, can I go to this thing? And everyone was like, oh, you just want to go to Disney on company time. First of all, no. But secondly, I just think it looks like a really cool conference. And so the answer was no last year. But what I heard was find another way. So I didn't hear the no. I heard find a different way to get what you want done. And so I had a conversation with my CDO, and she was giving me some real good career advice, and that was lovely. And I thought, let's submit a speaking presentation to this conference, because why not? Obviously, why not? So I submitted a speaking presentation, and then I went on holiday, and I hadn't heard back by the time I went on holiday. So I thought, well, I haven't got it, but also I never told anyone that I was going to apply for it. So, you know, my pride's not dented, it's fine. I came back from my holiday, and I had an email from the chap who leads Dataversity saying, we'd love you to come and do a talk, but is there any chance that you want to turn that into a full day workshop for us instead?
Wow.
And so I sent a message to my boss saying, okay, door number 1, I could go to this conference and not do a talk and just attend as a delegate. Door number 2, I could do a 45-minute presentation. Or door number 3, I need some time off my work to create a workshop that I can deliver real value back to all of the attendees at this event. Door number 4 of not going was never an option for me. In my head, I was going to that conference. It was just whether or not I was paying all of the money to go on my own, or being funded by my company, or whether or not it was going to be part funded by Dataversity, or whether it was all going to be funded by them, depending on my level of commitment. And that really resonated with the talk that I was given. So the talk that I gave was called Redefining Your Limits, the Power of How Hard Can It Be? So I asked myself that question daily, several times a day, of how hard could that be? Like, you want to learn how to ride a unicycle? How hard could it be? Really?
Yeah.
You want to learn how to juggle? Well, how hard could that be? You want to implement a master data management solution across 40 different countries? Oh, that sounds like it's going to be pretty hard. But how hard could it actually be?
Yeah.
And so if we start to talk about things from a different standpoint of, it's not a no, it's a find a different way to get what you want. And that really spoke with how I ended up talking at Enterprise Data World with Dataversity. So when I presented it back to my boss, and he said, yep, door number 2, go and do your 45-minute talk, off you go. I was so excited, all of the excitement, because like I say, being someone who's grown up in a council estate, you know, we didn't have loads of money when I was younger, we didn't go on fancy holidays, that was never my life. To now being flown to Orlando to go and give a presentation and attend a conference was just a different world for me. And I have a lot of pride of where I've come to now. And again, we don't talk about things, and we don't celebrate success as much as we should. And this was also part of my talk as well, was talking about learning to celebrate successes. And that could be standing up at an international conference and giving a presentation for the first time. It could be coming on a podcast. But it could be something really simple, or something in your personal life, like running a 5K or taking 30 seconds off your personal best for it. Whatever success looks like for you, and that's the key point, it's the for you bit, because that will be different for everybody. That how hard could it be to get there if that's what you want to do? And so there will be times when it is really, really difficult, and actually you decide that the sacrifice isn't worth all of the effort. So could I become, I don't know, a lawyer? Probably. If I went to university, I learned some stuff. Sounds like a bit of effort from where I am now. Do I really want to do that? Probably not. So I'm probably not going to do it. But I know that I could if I really wanted to. And so I think it's looking at what are the sacrifices that you might have to make in order to get what you want. Is it something that's going to be worth it in the long run for you or not? And also, as I say in my talk, as a woman, I reserve the right to change my mind at any given time about what success meant for me. And I guess that's true of a lot of women in their careers as well. And we see a lot around the motherhood penalty in particular. And if you follow any of the work around pregnant then screwed, you'll know some of the alarming stats. But talking about what it's like as a woman having a career and a family, those are possibilities. It is real life that can happen. And I think that we need to talk about these things more so that we actually say, you know, there might be times when you want to take a bit of a step back. So if people have young children or they've got an elderly relative or they've got someone that's going through something, you might want a bit less pressure from a work perspective because you've got a lot going on in your home life. But when you've got to a place where actually you can take on more work again, how do we leave the door open for our colleagues and our employees to say, I'm ready for more, like give me more work and I'm ready to take that next step? And I think creating some of those conversations with our employees around when to put the pressure on, when to take it off, really helps with a lot of that as well, so that we can really find that balance of being able to push and support people but without overwhelming them with work.
Yeah, and help them understand what's possible and what they can believe in.
Absolutely.
And I think with belief can come bravery, because I always remember I moved to Japan at 23.
Amazing.
And I used to come back and, you know, at the pub at Christmas and everyone's like, I wish I could live abroad. I'm like, what's stopping you?
Yeah.
You know, and I started a business in the midst of COVID, April 2020. And that was brave again. And people say to me, oh, I wish I could have a business. What's stopping you?
Yeah.
And, you know, I do feel lucky that I've got a degree of braveness and belief. But like you said, you had an amazing mentor, a manager who said to you, you could do this.
Exactly.
And he helped instill that in you. So that's why the power of mentorship is so important. Because if you don't fundamentally have that belief from how you've been brought up, it's someone else to show you what's possible.
Absolutely. And so maybe that's a degree we need to have from the School of Life.
I think so.
It's the degree of bravery.
Yeah.
You're onto something there.
No, I really do though. There's so much power in it. And, you know, it is being brave, but it's also like weighing up the, you know, some people would say, is it worth spending, you know, 3 nights a week studying? Yes or no. And it's weighing it up, but it's actually allowing yourself to have those thoughts rather than straight away dismissing it. Oh no, I can't do that. Oh, that's not for me.
Yeah. And do you know all that stuff is? It's data analytics.
It is. I like what you did there. It's so true though, isn't it? And you can use that and take emotions out of the equation.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And it's a really good logical way to look at your problem.
Yeah. Yeah.
So I say data is the heart of everything.
Yes, it is.
You're welcome.
And in terms of being a mentor, someone after your talk asked you to mentor them. What a compliment.
I know, right? It was really lovely. So I was really nervous before I went on.
Yeah.
And like I say, it was the first time that I'd spoken internationally at an event like that. And I talked really openly about that in my talk because that moment of vulnerability meant that other people in the room could have something to aspire to as well if they've never done it, but there's a possibility that they could one day. And so someone came up to me afterwards to say that they were really inspired by the journey that I've gone through, that they were going through a similar journey, and would I mind reaching out, would I mind mentoring them? And I mentor quite a few people and with quite good success rates actually of people getting promotions or getting to their next whatever good looks like for them. And not because I'm not saying that because I mean to be big-headed, but sometimes people can't see what's right in front of them. Yeah. I mean, how many times as a woman you've tried something on, you went, do I look okay in this? Does this look right? It's the same from a career perspective, you know. Yeah. Am I doing okay? Does this feel okay? Am I doing this right? Those are similar questions that you would ask to your friends. And so it's a massive privilege for someone to say to me, could you mentor me? Because they think that I've got something worthwhile listening to. When I was at the conference in Orlando, I held both a mentee and a mentor sticker on my badge because whilst I know some stuff, I am not arrogant enough to realise that I don't know everything.
Yeah.
So I still have a lot to learn. So I'm fortunate enough to have some really good mentors in my life, actually, who can give me guidance, who can help direct me on the things that I'm struggling with. And I think for everyone, it's finding those people that you can trust and say, can you give me some honest feedback on this thing?
Yes.
Because sometimes you just don't know that you're really good at it.
Yeah. Talking about bravery, somewhere I'm not quite yet is public speaking, but I'd really like to do it. And
you realise you're in public now, Emma,
yes,
right?
Yes, to a degree, but there's not like a huge audience. And at the first Let's Talk Data event, I don't remember what I said. I had no script. And for me, it was just good getting on stage and saying something. And my sister, my therapist, also my critic, was like, you didn't talk about this. You didn't talk about me. I was like, Charlotte, to get on stage with a microphone in front of people and say some words was a win. But now, next time, I actually want to tell Mirai's story more. I want to talk about my purpose and ikigai and Japanese culture.
Yeah.
But also, I'm talking about it now, but in reality, it's going to be scary. So for you, this was your first public event. Yeah. How did you overcome the fear? Because I feel like my body will take over and I'll start shaking and won't be able to get my words out.
And so what?
True.
What is the worst that is going to happen to you at that point?
Yeah.
Because actually, having been at that event that you're talking about, that you stood up and spoke for the first time, you actually wouldn't have known that was the first time. So everyone else would have been oblivious to that. You are in your own head at that point because you know, and you have the fear of judgment and what are people going to think, and what if I fluff my lines, and what if I don't ask this in the right way? Who cares?
Yeah.
The only person that's going to remember how you felt is you.
Yeah.
And so if you feel like things are going to go well, then they are going to go well for you, because you're putting that out there to say, yeah, I believe in myself. I know what I'm talking about. And you definitely know what you're talking about, Emma. So I think finding a subject that you understand, that you know well, having a go at talking about it.
Yeah.
What is the worst that's going to happen? Someone doesn't agree with your opinion. Well, that's fine. Their opinions, everyone's entitled to one. It doesn't mean to say you have to agree with everyone. And for me, I think the biggest thing for me that I also sort of tell myself all the time is, other people's opinions of me are none of my business.
Yeah, that's a good one. I like that.
Who cares what people think? I should write a book with pictures.
No, with all these amazing mantras. We're going to move on to the quick fire data lightning round.
Okay.
What's one common misconception about data that you'd like to debunk?
That it's boring, and for people who spend all of their time in their basement coding, and that you need to be really good at coding in order to work in data. You don't.
Yeah.
I have limited to zero coding skills, but I have the ability to call out BS.
Yes, love that. Name a book, event or podcast that you think every data enthusiast should explore.
Ooh, well, obviously I'm a massive fan of the women in data stuff, so I would recommend lots of things by women in data. I'm really super excited about the stuff that a company called Hertility are doing.
I know Hertility.
Oh my God, they're amazing.
Yeah, they're amazing.
Women's health.
Yeah, I want them to come on the podcast.
Okay, let's make it happen.
Yeah, they were at Women in Data, and their talk, because talking about gender imbalance, wow, female health, it's just...
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And they're doing some phenomenal stuff. I mean, we might not cut this, we might cut this, whatever. But some of the stuff that they are doing around women's health in particular is amazing.
Yeah.
So I myself have benefited from having one of their at-home test kits.
Yeah.
And then being able to take that data to my GP so that my GP could listen to me. I think some of the alarming stats that they push out is it takes on average 8 to 10 years for a woman to be diagnosed with endometriosis.
Gosh.
That is a long time of someone going through pain month on month.
Yeah.
The amount of absenteeism that we would have as employers in the workplace, the lack of productive hours that we would have, we can do so much better. And so I think Hertility are doing some really great stuff in the women's health space, and in particular their reproductive health, which we just need to talk about more of. It's not a taboo subject, right? As women start to work longer in life as they go through menopause. You are going to work with a woman, you're going to work for a woman, you're going to work beside a woman. You might just be the child of a woman who's gone through menopause, or married to a woman who's going through it. You know, whatever the case might be, you're going to come into contact with a woman going through menopause at some point in our life, and we need to be more educated about that. And it's one of the things that we've spoken about as a company, as well as how do we support women going through that. How do we as an organisation put things in place so that people can get the best out of them, small adaptations that we can do in the workplace. And then we started to take that a step further and say, well, what about everything that's related to a woman's menstrual health, reproductively? What should that look like? What does it look like if you've got painful periods? Or maybe wearing white overalls isn't a good idea, and where can we change some of our overalls, or can we get overalls that fit women? And what does it mean when a woman's pregnant and our coveralls don't fit her anymore? What do we do then? And so really starting to take that as a more holistic approach to say, how can we just make it a little bit easier for people? So I'd recommend Fertility.
Yes.
Absolutely. And a book, I really like a book called Be More Pirate.
Oh, I've not heard of that.
Such an interesting book, and it talks about how pirates were seen as the anarchists, the trailblazers, the problems of society, and actually they created a lot of good stuff like sick pay, and starting to think about how they might do stuff differently and be more revolutionary. And actually it's really interesting how a lot of the pirate techniques you actually apply in real life if you want to be a trailblazer.
Do you think maybe you were a pirate in another life?
Maybe.
I'll read that. Thank you. I've not heard of that one. If you could offer one piece of advice to someone just starting their journey into the world of data, what would that be?
Ask some questions. And when you think you've asked too many questions, ask another question.
Yes. Be super, super curious.
Absolutely.
And annoy people somewhat.
Yes.
And you won't be annoying them.
No.
Finish this sentence. Data is the key to.
Ooh, data is the key to. I'm going to say it is the key to everything. And this is from, so I was lucky enough to go see a talk by Professor Brian Cox.
Oh, wow.
Talking about how you can imagine what the universe looked like using the information that you've got from various lasers in the sky, and how you might see the ripple effect of stars and planets moving through the universe, and how they might imagine what the universe looked like at the point of the Big Bang. All of that was data. So actually I think data might be everything.
Yeah, I don't think you're wrong there. In your opinion, what will be the most significant development in the world of data in the next 5 years?
I think the most significant development is probably amongst us at the moment. So I think a lot of people are really curious about data. The rise in AI and generative AI, the hype cycle that's on at the moment, are getting people really interested in about what data actually is, and can it be used for good or for evil? How do we ethically use data? Most people will know when they get a phone call from trying to sell double glazing to you, and that's been someone selling your data on. So I think a lot of people are more switched on to the use of data, and I think for me that makes it really exciting, because if we think back to what I said, in order to use all those really shiny things, you have to have it well architected, well understood and well governed. So it makes selling my job a lot easier, because you want to do all the nice shiny things.
Yeah, so true. Well, thank you. I could literally talk to you for hours.
Yes,
thank you so much.